Morning. Did you ever make a promise? Promises are sometimes hard to keep. R.E. Clark talks about the best promise ever made in his book, Life is Not a Snapshot. It says, as much as I would like to name names, I will not do so this morning. My desire is to distinguish the marked change in the premise of a promise from a mere 150 years ago to those who make promises today. I recently heard a professional candidate respond to a question about unkept promises. The summary of this response was that he had indeed kept his promises because he had kept some of them. His conclusion was that no one could have realistically expected him to keep all of them. Here's a story from the life of Abraham Lincoln, as told by Martin M. Heiser. One day, President Abraham Lincoln was riding in a coach with a colonel from Kentucky. The colonel took a bottle of whiskey out of his pocket. He offered Mr. Lincoln a drink. Mr. Lincoln says, no, thank Colonel. I never drink whiskey. In a little while, the colonel took some cigars out of his pocket and offered to Mr. Lincoln. Again, Mr. Lincoln said, no, thanks you, Colonel. Then Mr. Lincoln said, I want to tell you a story. He says, one day when I was about 9 years old, my mother called me to her bed. She was very sick. She said, Abe, the doctor tells me I'm not going to get well. I want you to be a good boy. I want you to promise me before I go that you'll never use whiskey or tobacco as long as you live. I promised my mother that I never would, and up to this hour, I kept this promise. Would you advise me to break that promise? The colonel put his hand out to Mr. Lincoln's shoulder and said, Mr. Lincoln, I would not have you break that promise for the world. It is the one of the best promises you ever made. I would give $1,000 today if I had made my mother a promise like that and had kept it like you have done. I would be a much better man than I am now. Now, I do not know what your definition of a promise is, but I preferred Mr. Lincoln's to the present day politicians. One thing is for sure, God keeps every one of his promises. In Proverbs 30, verses 5 through 6, it says this, every word of God is pure. He is a shield to those who put their trust in him. Do not add to his words, lest he rebuke you, and you be found a liar. Good advice for the day. Are you keeping your promises to God, to your family, to your church? Something to think about today. God bless you. Have a great day.